this vlog, I'm going to share exactly what is the most important thing to me and the whole of this planet, why I'm doing all of this, and what leads me to have the most success out of all the other sales podcasters out there and just podcasters in general. Welcome to the Salesman Podcast Studio Tour. So there's a whole bunch we're going to go through because I get asked questions about the studio, the equipment that I'm using all the time. The most important thing to note is that you don't need any of this to have a successful podcast. There's plenty of podcasters out there that just have a USB microphone, they're not doing video, and they're just interviewing interesting people. So take all this with a pinch of salt. This is where we're at with the new studio build, and hopefully this will be a documentation of how things move forward over the next kind of like 4 or 5 years or so. So the place is a bit of a mess at the moment, but you can see there's kind of two elements to it. There is one, sound, which is these, which we'll go on to in a minute, microphone, all this. Element 2 is video, which is clearly the cameras and the screens behind here. You've got lights and all this good stuff as well. And we'll start with sound. This is the most important thing about any podcast. Don't let anyone tell you anything differently. You can record, and the sound quality from this camera that I'm using right here is terrible. You can record using this quality, but no one's going to listen to the show over the long term. First thing to invest in is microphone and recorder of some sorts. I use the Shure SM7B. This is the microphone that Michael Jackson recorded Thriller on. Crazy. This is a preamplifier. This gives the small amount of volume from the microphone more sound, essentially. So when I talk into the microphone, you can see it responding here. So that's your preamplifier. It goes into a compressor, goes into some other bits which I don't really use. The noise gate is kind of important. We can touch on that. So the point of a noise gate is that when I'm not talking, it's red. It's turned off. So if there's someone in the room screaming next to you, when it's red, the recording won't record that. So this is good for if you are tapping on the table, for example. It doesn't show up, or clearly if you're banging on the table, it will, but it gets rid of all those subtle noises that are really annoying in the background. I've got it set up so that my phone can be on the table and vibrate, and it still doesn't come through, so that's how powerful that is. Next up in the rack, I have this Aphex channel, so it has both a big bottom and an aural exciter. The big bottom gives you that deep radio voice that we're all looking for, and it does it somewhat artificially, but this is essentially the hardware that radio stations use to get that deep, low-end voice in their recordings. It sounds really nice to listen to. Aural exciter, allegedly, is clinical. Well, I suppose it's not allegedly because it's clinically shown to do it, but it allegedly, I'm going to say that word because I'm 90% sold on the concept. Allegedly, it makes the higher end more legible, it makes it easier to hear. So I'm only subtly have both of these turned on, and it does make a difference to the recording. It makes it sound more radio-like and more polished. From there, everything's going into this mixer. Now this is where things get exciting and really useful for podcasters specifically. So the mixer allows you and I to both do what's called a mix minus. So you can Google this. I'm not going to go through it specifically in the ins and outs of it, but it allows me to hear myself and the guest on my headphones when we're recording. And it allows Skype and the guest just to hear me. Because if they can hear themselves and me, it all gets a bit weird because of the time it takes for the data to get from me to America where I'm doing the interview. It takes a little bit of time, so there's a delay. So they hear an echo in the earphones if you're just throwing everything across. So that's called a mix minus, and that is important for podcasters because you want to be able to hear yourself, you want to be able to hear the guest, and again, the guest wants to just hear you. And if you've got headphones on and you can't hear yourself, if you do this and start talking, it all sounds a little bit weird, and you start shouting, and it all gets a little bit weird in the audio side of things at the far end when we start recording. So up next is the recording. So the final piece of the puzzle is these cables coming out of here. They go into this. So this is recording. You can see that one channel moving up and down. This is recording and it goes to an SD card. I then put this SD card into the computer. Now, why don't I just use the USB out on the mixer? Why do I record to an SD card separately? Why do I do that? It's super simple. Computers crash. I don't care whether you've got a Windows machine, a Mac, whatever it is, they always break. And if yours hasn't crashed recently, if you've not had that Windows blue screen of death, expect it. That's how I look at things. And last thing I want to do is get super excited for an interview, have all my questions written out, have done really hours and hours of work beforehand to both get the guest on the interview, to do the questions. Last thing that I want to do is then ruin it, having the computer going from the mixer to USB, recording in Audacity, recording in whatever software that you use on the computer. I don't want the computer to crash and ruin it all. And so everything goes to that hardware recorder, which essentially never crashes. It's got one job to do, and it's designed to do it very well. So this is where things start to get interesting. This is what I think separates us, the Salesman Podcast, from all the other sales content out there. And this has been helped along with Quotable.com. They are partnering with us, the Salesman Podcast, to rebuild this whole studio, to add a whole ton of new interactive elements to it, such as this video wall that's going to add so much value to the content. It allows me to do way more. It allows me to open the scope of these videos far greater than what we had before, which was a fake brick wall, which I'm going to show you right now. So, from a distance, this looks like actual bricks, but it's just stuck on. Stuck on by tape up the top there as well. So when you see us putting way more content out in 2017, when you see way more stuff like this, and us essentially upping the game with the sales content that we're producing, you can thank Quotable.com, and yeah, just go over there. There's a ton of great articles for you and I, and just sales professionals in general. If you want to up your game, something that I get asked about a lot is these weird curtains that are in the background everywhere. Clearly it's not for the aesthetics, it is for this, and hopefully you're going to be able to hear it. So as I'm talking, there's going to be a bit of echo. I'm talking over it here, but then as I get closer to it, there should be less echo and it should be more of a dead sound. Again, when we come back up over the top. So I'm not sure if the microphone's going to pick that up, but essentially it ruins the ability for the room to bounce sound around. So what you don't want is, I'm speaking there, then it comes and hits this wall behind me, then it goes back into the microphone, because when it goes back to the microphone, there's been a delay and you get that echo. And finally, to record all this beautiful video, we use a Panasonic GH4 with what is now famous, is like a world-leading, world-class lens, which is Panasonic 20mm that's on there. So no more complex than that, really. Don't be sold into the fact that you have to have a red epic camera, that you have to spend thousands and thousands and thousands. This cost me about 700 quid. The lens, probably another 120, both second-hand, and that's what I use for all of the studio content. That's what I use for all the live content. I personally think that the results are, good enough for sure. More important, for great video, we need this and we need this. The lighting's more important than the video camera. Most modern HD cameras or 4K cameras, even your phone, they'll do a pretty good job. If you're not lit up correctly, so I'm stood underneath one light here, looks a bit boring. As soon as I come over here, see the camera kind of trying to adjust, and the white balance is off slightly, so it looks slightly bluish, but that just demonstrates, as I'm blinding myself because it's pretty bright, but you can see the kind of shadow that it creates. That image is a far nicer one than that one, and the camera hasn't changed. The only thing that's happened is it's got a bit brighter. And there we have it. That is the studio tour, and hopefully that gives you kind of a brief overview of everything that we're doing here and how we pull this content together. It's not that complex, it's not that difficult. There's a aesthetic eye, an edge, I don't know, something to it that you can't just throw all this into a room and just come out with what we do. There is an element of art to it, whatever that means. And you know what? Do you know what the most important factor of all of this is to my success, to my happiness, to all of this? I'll give you a clue first. It's not the GTR. It's coming, but it's not this. But all this studio, all the success I've had, the growth of the show, I'd give that up in an absolute instant, because that isn't success to me. That's not what's driving me forward. I'm not motivated by this. I'm not motivated by any of this, just stuff. So I'm just about to go and pick up my girlfriend, then we're going to drive over to St. Helens, then we're going to go out for a meal with myself, my two brothers, my dad, the Baron gang essentially, and that's all that really matters to me. That's what motivates me, the ability to have the time, cash, the opportunity, the freedom, all that tied up, to be able to just go and travel home and spend time with the family. That's what matters, none of this stuff. No.
Hello.
You alright?
Yeah?
Car's a bit dirty. Apologise. Both inside and out.
but I hate it when you hiss and preach about your new messiah, 'cause your theories catch fire. I can't find no silver